Okay, so this video has been a long time coming, but I think it was worth it. And here is Generations Metroplex, completely repainted. Now, when I first saw this toy come out, I really liked the robot mode. I thought the carrier mode was alright. I thought the city mode was pretty bad. I mean, it looked like Metroplex just sat down and then broke apart. I'm not a fan of the city mode. But I thought, hey, if I have him in my display case, I'm going to display him in robot mode exclusively. So that was okay. The problem I had with the toy was that it had a bunch of white plastic to it, and the details just didn't show up very well, and it looked like a toy. I mean, it really did look like a child's toy to me. So I told myself that if I ever got this, I was going to repaint it. Now, little did I know that it was going to take me 3 months to do this whole project. And when you think about it, this toy is 2 feet tall. I mean, this is almost like 5 models put together. 5 regular size models. So I didn't really realize when I tackled this how long it was going to take me. I thought it would take me a month at the most. But I'm still glad I did it. I'm glad with the results. And yeah, there you go. So let me get some close-up shots. There he is. That's his face. Show you some of the chest details. Alright, so for all you modelers out there that are wondering how I actually repainted this guy, I actually tried a whole bunch of new techniques for me. For the experienced modelers, you guys probably do this all the time, but for me, these are all new stuff. So let me just go through it one by one. So for the weathering technique, one of the things I tried this time was I would spray the lines black. So if you see here, right here, I would spray this in a really dark color. And then I would go back over it and lightly dust it with white, and I would concentrate more white in the center areas and then kind of lightly dust these areas to soften it up a bit. And that technique worked pretty well for some of the areas. The technique kind of fails when you get to places where there's just way too many lines or details, but in the leg area here, I thought it worked pretty well. Now, for other places like, let's say, the arm, what I used mostly was this thing called Pro Modeler Wash, and it's this clay-based wash where you can just spray it on, and then you pretty much go in with a Q-tip and you rub off the areas that you want clean. So I would rub off, let's say right here, I'd rub off that area to try to clean it up a little, so it didn't look quite that dirty. And the Pro Modeler Wash worked pretty well, although I did have some difficulties with it. One of the difficulties was that when you spray it onto a matte finish, it's very difficult to wash it off. I mean, you really have to get the Q-tip very wet, and even then sometimes you can't wipe it off because the clay just kind of bonds with the paint, and that got a little frustrating because I would have to go back in and repaint some of the pieces white, and then do the Pro Modeler Wash again. And I found out that if you do it over a glossy surface, the problem is that it wipes off way too easily, so then you don't really get a natural blend. Like you would just touch it with a Q-tip and all this clay would come off, and it didn't look right. I find the best thing to do is to get kind of a semi-gloss going so that you can still rub it off, but it doesn't rub off so easily that it gives you an unnatural look. Alright, another technique I used was dry brushing, and for those of you who don't know what dry brushing is, it's pretty much you dip your paintbrush into a paint pot, get it wet, but then use a paper towel or a cloth, and you just wipe off most of the paint until there's only a little bit of paint left. And the idea is that you just want the paint to stick to like the raised areas of the plastic, and it gives you this nice textured look. And as you can see here, so if you look at the top part of his chest, I just painted that black, and then I just dry brushed all over it, and I think that turned out pretty well. If you look at the bottom part of his chest, what I did was I just went over the edges with the dry brush to try to make it look like paint had chipped away from wear and tear. And you can see the effect here over his chest. You can see the effect there. So yeah, this was my first time dry brushing, and overall I'm pretty happy with the results. Sometimes you might build up too much paint in one area and then it doesn't look right, and then the only thing you can do is just, depending on what kind of paint you use. I was using Tamiya acrylics, so then I would use Windex and a Q-tip and just rub off some of the paint and just try to redo it. Before I forget, let me just tell you one tip that I found to be useful. When you do put down the base coat black that you have to paint over with the silver, I like to use either acetone or a lacquer black, so that when I go over it with a Tamiya acrylic silver, I can just use Windex and wipe off the silver, but not wipe off the black. So if you make a mistake, you can just go back and take off the silver and you don't have to redo everything all over again. Now if you look at his face, this is actually a technique that I have used before. All I did was, I think I used Rust-Oleum semi-gloss black or gloss black, and I painted his face, and then I went over that with an Alclad chrome. And as you can see, it looks pretty metallic, and I think it's just so much better than the white plastic that it used to be. It just, to me, it gives it that premium feel. Alright, so I'm just taking some video of the back just to show you that yes, I did detail the back as well, not just the front. And I think that turned out pretty well. And just to let you know, I also did Scamper. As you can see, I did some dry brushing on him as well. Okay, so for all you modelers out there, one of the things that I was trying to figure out when I was painting this thing was whether to prime it or not, because almost everybody I talk to say you have to prime your parts, but then I would paint this primer on and the paint would scratch off just as easily as if I didn't use primer. So that was pretty frustrating. And what I found for myself was that if I use, most of you might be familiar with the Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch spray cans, where it's supposed to be paint and primer together. If you use a semi-gloss or a gloss, that will act as a pretty good primer. That's what I found. If you use the matte primers, they tend to scratch off too easily. But what I did with this guy was I would spray him with, let's say, a semi-gloss or gloss gray. I find the gray colors to spray on very well and give you a pretty smooth finish. and then I would paint whatever color that I wanted the piece to be after that in Tamiya acrylics. I'd airbrush it on. And for some reason, it sticks a lot better for me. So I would highly recommend that if you plan on priming your toy, to give that a try. Just spray it with a semi-gloss or gloss Rust-Oleum and then go over it with your airbrush. One last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is this hand. So the way I did this hand was, first I painted it with I believe a Rust-Oleum gloss black to give it that primer, but since the hand was supposed to be black anyway, I didn't put any other paint on top of it except for a little bit of dry brushing to make it look like paint was chipping off. Now the problem is I wanted this whole thing to be in matte. I didn't want to have gloss paint on it, so I was trying to figure out how to dull the gloss down. If you look at it, it might be a little satiny, but for the most part it's pretty matte. And I went to the hobby shop and I got a bunch of different responses on what I should use. One guy swore by the Tester's dull coat, but I had read online that the Vallejo flat matte was very good. But the guy at the model shop said that the Vallejo flat matte was terrible. So who do you believe? Well, here's what I found out. The Tester's dull coat works pretty well. The only problem with the Tester's dull coat is it's around $6 to $7 a can, and the cans are pretty small. So it's expensive, but if money is no object, go ahead, buy the Tester's dull coat and spray that. For me, I wanted something where I had a little more control over it, that I could spray it through an airbrush. So I wanted to try the Vallejo, but what I read online was that you don't want to spray the Vallejo straight out of the bottle. And the bottles are really, really tiny. So what you want to do is you want to get one of those mixing bottles that show you, how much you're pouring in. They have like the different levels or lines to show you how much you're putting in. And you want to mix a solution that's 50% Vallejo matte and 25% Future Floor Wax and 25% distilled water. And when I thinned down the Vallejo that way, I was able to spray it out of my airbrush with no problem, and I really liked the results I got. One thing I did hear was that when you do spray it through your airbrush, do not use Windex to clean it up, use Simple Green. If you don't know what Simple Green is, you can go to your Home Depot. It's a cleaner. It's kind of like Windex. Smells really awful, but it works. So yeah, just wanted to let you know that for me, the Vallejo, even though it came in a small bottle, I felt that it was worth it because I could have a lot more control when I was spraying my matte finish. Well, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video of my Generations Metroplex Custom. And for you modelers out there, I hope you got some valuable information based off of my experiences. And I will be following this video, just like in my Gundam video, with a gallery of some of the pictures I took of Generations Metroplex with the standard iMovie cheesy music. Alright, enjoy, and until next time, I'm signing off.